Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Did you know that there was a mass shooting in Dallas over the weekend? 9 people shot. There's a mass shooting in Chicago, 11 people shot. There's a mass shooting in New Orleans, 11 people shot as well. I go over to this database that's housed at usatoday.com. They did a partnership with the Associated Press and Northeastern University. So there's some academics, there's some experts in there, and they're keeping track of all of the mass shootings that have happened thus far. And this one didn't make it. Oh, the one in Dallas didn't make it? How's that a thing? Well, maybe the one in New Orleans made it because it's in double digit. No, that one didn't make it either. Well, what about the one in Chicago? No, that didn't make the list either. They have the list. How many are on here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 13. They have 13 events. And in these mass shootings, they fit what we generally think of in the description of mass shooting that we see on TV. Someone goes into a public place and starts squeezing off rounds, and multiple people get hit. Well, in this scenario, none of the total injuries are as high as any of the 3 shootings I just mentioned over the weekend, but they don't make the list. Now, why is that? They are a mass shooting. There is many people hit. They were in public areas. It wasn't like a murder-suicide where some guy goes and kills his family and then himself. Let's get you started. We'll get started with the report from our news partner, WFAA. This was their reporting from yesterday on the mass shooting that happened in Dallas.
This is what Collins Avenue looked like moments after 9 people were shot early Sunday. One of them, 21-year-old Carisha Bradford, the only victim who did not survive.
Yeah.
Carisha's aunts told me she was at a party with her cousin when someone opened fire. They got a call she'd been hurt just after 1:30 a.m.
So I got up and tried to rush to her. It wasn't until I was in the car on the way to her, and they told me she had got shot.
Police tell WFAA Carisha and all 8 other victims were at a party that began at Juanita Craft Park Saturday night. That party eventually moved to Collins Avenue, a residential area nearby. Around 11 p.m., police responded to the after-party on Collins after receiving reports of gunfire.
When our officers got there wasn't any more gunfire.
But DPD spokesperson Kristen Lauman said when officers first arrived, nobody was shooting. Nobody had been shot. So officers left but stayed in the area nearby. The party continued until the fatal shooting happened, just over 2 hours later.
Detectives also believe that there is some sort of gang involvement in this incident.
Police Chief Eddie Garcia announced Sunday evening he'd launched an internal investigation to, quote, determine if his officers could have handled the circumstances of this call differently. The department's other priority, finding whoever did this. Carisha's aunts told me they need an arrest. They need answers to heal.
My niece deserves the justice.
So there's a couple of interesting things to talk about, specifically with that shooting that happened in Dallas. But let's go ahead and break this from a high general level to begin with. I hate talking about this stuff because we're talking about dead people, but where's the gun control crowd on this one? Gun control, are y'all not hyping this up? They love to jump on these shootings in order to push bills. When we have the legislation, or I shouldn't say legislation, the executive order from Biden, where he is changing the definition of something in your gun control statutes in order to crack down on private sales, the gun show loophole, that was predicated off of a law that passed after Uvalde. When Uvalde happens, everyone gets in an uproar and they go to their public officials and they get a law passed. When this happens, no one gets in an uproar. No one goes to their public officials and demands a law be passed. Why? Where's the Black Lives Matter crowd on this one? I understand it was shocking to see George Floyd die while a cop had his knee in his back, and as horrible and tragic as that death is, no worse or better than this 21-year-old young lady who died. As far as we know, she wasn't committing a crime. She didn't pass off any counterfeit bills. She didn't have a history of armed robbery and armed assault. She didn't have a history of drug usage or going to jail. She wasn't on fentanyl and meth at the time. No complaints there? You're not going to block any highways for her, huh? You're not going to block any on-ramps? You're not going to go out in the street? There's not going to be any signs? You're not going to throw the brick through the window of a Foot Locker and go get yourself some Air Force Ones? No? Why not? Al Sharpton going to come make a statement? NAACP, Benjamin Crump? Are you going to lawyer up, make some lawsuits? No? Did the shooters get their guns at a gun show? I think that's an interesting question to ask. We just had the gun show loophole say, well, we got to get that thing solved. Well, did these people not pass their concealed carry course? Were they concealed carrying without a permit? Did we ask about that? Was there a shortcoming in the instruction that they got at the range? Were they not stopped by a background check when they got their gun? Were the shooters using assault weapons? Were the shooters wearing MAGA hats? Were the shooters Republicans or a demographic that leans Republican? What's the race of the shooters? What's the race of the victims? Because in some stories, they have to put it in the headlines. White cop kills black man. But in this one, no mention of the race of the shooters or the victim. Race is not important. Doesn't mean anything in this one. In other shootings, most important factor ever. In this shooting, people have a race? People have skin. Well, why would you even bring that up? But listen, if you only question the gun shows when it's time to pass gun rights restrictions, but don't consider them when there's an actual act of gun violence, you're unethical, you're immoral, you're a dishonest, and you're dishonest to further a political cause, which is sort of the definition of propaganda. You're a propagandist. If this is how you choose to report your news, if you selectively insert race when, if and only if it helps your political narrative, you're not a news outlet. You know, we don't do that here at WBAP. All of our news guys pass the smell test. You don't even know what the political leanings of Eric is. You don't know the political leanings of anyone in our... I dare you. You don't know. You don't know who they voted for. You can't tell. That's how it's supposed to be. But that's not how it is. If you're only worried about the type of gun used, so whether it's an assault rifle or a semi-automatic handgun, if it furthers your narrative, you're unethical too. You're immoral. You're dishonest to further a political cause. You're a propagandist. If you only care about the political affiliation or ideology of a murderer, when it makes your political opponents look bad, you're unethical. You're immoral. You're a propagandist. You're dishonest. People are all upset about we got to look at the motivation of the shooter in Buffalo. He was racist. Look at the guy in El Paso. He was racist. Well, what about the ideology of these shooters? Doesn't matter. What about their political affiliation? Doesn't matter. No. Why? It would make your narrative look bad. It would destroy your narrative. If you only report the race of the shooters and or the victim, if it makes me and Sean and white people in America in general look bad, you are unethical. You are immoral. You are dishonest. If you do not report these factors evenly across all situations when you're reporting on gun violence, and you only strategically report on certain details, if it fits your narrative, do you also realize you're just reporting on these details when it tears our communities apart? Because what would happen if the media stopped doing this? Politicians and academics, and, the usual suspects, celebrities making their little montage videos. What if they were actually honest and started reporting these details evenly? What would happen? What would happen if they did what I'm recommending now? Well, the general public would come to a pretty quick understanding that crime and violence in the black community is almost exclusively black on black. It can't be blamed on white people. It can't be blamed on a lack of gun control. It can't be blamed on background checks or what type of weapon they're using. It's the idea that black people should be scared or even skeptical of white people and cops would be laughed out of the room if they started reporting this stuff evenly. The idea that we need to be cracking down on the gun show crowd, and if we did just crack down on them with the private cells in the parking lots of gun shows, that would reduce violence, that would be seen for what it is, an absolutely lunatic position. Any attempts to ban assault rifles would be seen as out of touch. Racial tensions would ease. They would reduce in both directions. Suspicion between the races would be vastly reduced. Fewer minorities would resist the cops and get themselves into a situation, a FAFO situation. But in Chicago, they didn't have a 21-year-old girl fatally shot in their mass shooting. They had 11 injured and an 8-year-old girl fatally shot. Will you know her name? Will Drew Brees put it on his helmet during practice? I know he's retired, but he did that with Jacob Blake. Anyone run around saying her name? What is her name? You don't know. You're not going to know. It's going to be ignored. You will never know her name. But you have to hear these other names. You have to hear about Michael Brown and Trayvon Martin and George Floyd and all the rest. Now, national news, CNN, MSNBC, they don't want to report on this because it doesn't make people scared of you. It doesn't make people scared of this country. It doesn't make the feeling of chaos like, oh my God, we got to change something. Because here's the truth. Whites and blacks are not at each other's throats in America. White people are not oppressing or harming blacks in general. In fact, blacks are safer when they're hanging out with white people than their own. If you're black, are you not safer in San Francisco than you are in Oak Cliff? I'm not making a racial statement. I'm making a numbers statement. And if people got that message, many would probably be taking the next logical step. Perhaps they would be considering the policies and the cultural preferences of the suburban and rural communities that have done better at controlling violence. So, pretty ugly stuff, isn't it? Didn't hear about any of those mass shootings. And none of those lives, I guess they don't matter.